What's up? I'm Jared Harris, and you're listening to episode 41 of Beats by Jer. I'm joined today by Marc LaBelle and John Notto, respectively the lead singer and lead guitarist of Dirty Honey. Based out of Los Angeles, Dirty Honey exudes rock and roll. In less than a decade, the band moves at a rapid clip, releasing numerous singles, including covers by Prince and Aerosmith, and have released an EP, 2019's Dirty Honey, along with a pair of studio albums, 2021's Self-Titled and 2023's Can't Find the Breaks. Through these releases, the band showcases a sound absolutely steeped in the 70s. In addition to touring across North America and Europe, the band has also opened for The Who, Guns N' Roses, Slash, and the Black Crowes. Most impressively, they have achieved this while continuing to remain entirely independent of a record label. In fact, their debut single, 2019's When I'm Gone, is the only independently released single to make it to #1 on the Billboard rock charts. On February 21st, the band released their first live album, Mayhem And Revelry Live, a 16-track record that documents their most recent North American and European tour in celebration of their 2023 album, Can't Find the Breaks. Here's my conversation with Dirty Honey's Marc LaBelle and John Notto. Marc LaBelle, John Notto, thank you very much for joining me today on Beats by Jer and for the Spill magazine.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So first of all, congrats on the newest album, Mayhem and Revelry. It's fantastic.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, we put a ton of work into putting it together, obviously, and we're super proud of it. But it's nice to finally have it come out. But yeah, it's been super well received, and we've been somewhat giddy about it ever since the release. So it's been a really cool sort of revelation to realize that people still care about live recordings and stuff and are willing to, purchase it and all that good stuff.
I mean, like the live record is such a quintessential piece of like classic rock, and you don't see a lot of newer bands or even bands from the last 20 years doing the live album. But I think like it really just connects with your sound. It fully captures the energy of like a Dirty Honey show. It's a really cool record.
No, we appreciate it. And that was the goal too, is to shed some light on, who we are as a live band, and for people who haven't seen us, and obviously give the fans that are well familiar with us a little treat. And I think the energy somehow is well captured on this double LP. And that's really what we were striving for. So we appreciate it.
Cool. Now for those who haven't followed your work since the debut, the ascent of Dirty Honey has been really impressive, super inspiring. Can you give the listeners a little bit of the Dirty Honey story leading up to this point?
Yeah, we can. So you want to go from the beginning?
I mean, like the Coles Notes version, I guess, the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, the Cliff Notes. Yeah. What would you say, Cole?
I think that's more of a Canadian thing. I don't know.
Oh, okay, cool. I met Mark first. He had like a cover band thing that would play bars, and he had a few originals, and then it was me and him in a different, he had his own little unit, and we just basically sussed people out one by one and got the first unit for Dirty Honey in 2017 with Corey, and then which we highlight the very first gig in the docu-series there, which was on the street. It was pretty rad. And then in 2018, that was really the end of 2017. So right after that, in a few months, we started making demos. Then we attracted our manager, and by fall 2018, we were in Australia recording the first EP, which When I'm Gone and Rolling Sevens and Heartbreaker on that, obviously. And then it was really off to the races pretty quick. The Cliff Notes version is 2019 was a whirlwind of opening for Slash, opening for Guns N' Roses, getting a #1, and basically in a year's time going from, being first of three on a bill that really on a show that didn't even draw a lot of people to headlining our own tour. And then in 21 we did the I guess the first full-length album. We did that here in LA at a very famous studio called Henson Studios. And yeah, and then in 2021 we went out with the Black Crowes. That was cool. That was kind of like our first time doing like a full-length tour with like a legendary band. Then we hit Europe for the first time in 22, and yeah, it's just been I would say since the Black Crowes tour in 21, it's been a steady diet of 6 weeks touring, 6 weeks rest, 6 weeks touring, like almost straight. This break we're having right now is the longest break we've had, so that also dovetails perfectly into, releasing a live record now. Although, of course, we'd like to be on tour while promoting it, but it was, while we're thinking and starting to work on the next record. It's a
Sick.
nice, yeah, it's a
I
nice
mean,
thing
like,
to.
there's like a lot of cool stuff you dropped in there, and hearing that you guys have shared the stage with like some of the coolest rock bands around, right? Like
Yeah, it's
people
like
start
Guns N'
people,
Roses,
yeah,
Kids, yeah.
like people start bands and they're like, I want to open for Guns N' Roses, and it's like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. Is there like a bucket list artist that you guys have yet to share the stage with that you're like, that's the one, like that's who we have to play with, moving forward?
But
There's
it
three.
was,
There's four actually for me, and I don't even think it's possible for two of them to happen. But Led Zeppelin, of course, the Stones, Smith, and
Mm.
AC. AC/DC is a potential thing. I would also like to open for Metallica. I think that'd be cool as fuck. But
I think all of that would be super cool.
yeah, so we'll just have to wait and see if any of those
Yeah.
happen. And the other ones,
Yeah.
the Roses, the Who, the Black Crowes, those were all bucket list, of course, slots, but they've happened and they were all awesome. So the list is getting shorter, which is good. And John and I would agree, like, yeah, opening is certainly not your favorite thing to do.
I was going to say I would trade all this to skip that step and blow up next month.
Fair, fair.
At this point, but
S- So that brings us to Mayhem and Revelry. This was recorded during the tour for Can't Find the Breaks through North America and Europe throughout the last like year and a half, 2 years. When you started the tour, was the goal to record every show and make a live record?
No, it wasn't the goal. We just started recording shows and we sort of came to a point as we were listening back that we were like, we're pretty fucking good, like live when we put a little sauce on the mixes, and listen back. And I started listening kind of on days off when I would go to the gym. I would just kind of listen to the whole show and kind of use it more as a tool to maybe cut some things up for social media or see what we could improve upon, et cetera, et cetera. And we had a couple shows. I specifically remember listening back to a show in Indianapolis. It was a really fun show, packed little room, and just the energy was really high. And I just remember thinking we're playing pretty good tonight. And I listened back the next day, and Jaden actually helped with a little mixing of that, like just a little demo mix of the show. And I was like, this is fucking good. And then I sent it to everybody, and everybody was like, yeah, we're not too bad at this anymore, and start compiling these shows, and it became pretty evident. Yeah, we should do a live record.
So would you
And
say
we
like
all love
the
them.
yeah, would you say the Indianapolis show was kind of like that moment that was like, this is now on the table, like this distinctive moment between not really planning to do anything with these to like let's make a live record?
For me, it was. I just specifically remember feeling like we can achieve this in an authentic way where it's 100% live. And that's a show I remember listening back to and thinking like this whole show is great. There might be some things, that if we were pickier, oh, like I didn't nail that part or whatever, but it's like so minuscule. I wouldn't even call them mistakes, just the playing, like maybe I delivered a note or a lyric, in a way that I would, if it was going to be perfect, I would do it a little bit differently. But I was like, I'm cool with this whole thing going out. Um, if it were to live online on YouTube or something, bootleg, like I'd be totally cool with that. But yeah, that was my initial point where I was like, this is fucking for sure gonna happen. And then I think John had that moment when we were on a break from a tour somewhere. I'd sent them all like 20 shows, and he was like, yeah, this is amazing. Like we can do this for sure.
Cool. Was there like by the end of the tour, like a huge archive of shows that you guys had to go through? Because I'm assuming all of these songs are from different shows, correct?
About 65 shows.
Yeah. So like what was the process of going through them? How do you like determine when you're going through that much and you're performing at that level night after night? Like how do you go through the selection process?
Well, you can you can right away start with, if there's a big mistake right in the beginning of the song, you can be like, this might not be it. And then really the first, yeah, you have to prioritize people in the band. So the first thing is Mark, how well did he sing? And there was some ways that he would determine that too, we generally wouldn't choose a show from that was like a third show in a row or something. But um, yeah, and then after that, you kind of have a small batch of each song, and then every person kind of takes a listen, and everyone's got to take a little concession because we're not a band that plays to tracks or plays to a click, and we don't just stand there. So we all kind of have to accept a little bit of
Hmm.
Jimmy Page style, at least for me, a little imperfect.
I think style's the word for it though, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it is. It's. I mean, that's that's him live is like my first impression of how guitar should sound. So that I love all that stuff. But even with that said, there's better nights than others where the slop is just right and like the extra, hooks that you put in are a little more anointed than the other ones. So
Is
um
when you say words like slop and style, is that why you choose not to perform with a click going?
yeah, absolutely. It just keeps the energy, I think, of what we do in harmony with the audience, you know. I think if you stop, a song and then you start the next one and you have to wait for a dude to set up his click, yeah, it's an energy thing more than anything, I think.
Cool.
Um, and it's
Uh,
also just like that's how our heroes played. So we're the people we listen to didn't do that. So in a way, we're like stuck in a time warp where we're competing with people from forever ago. You know, we're not we're not trying to compete with how, a lot of the rock bands do it now, the newer rock bands,
yeah, and
which
I mean, listening to the record, like I've had it on repeat for the last like week or so. Like it's a really tight record.
we had to realize that we're actually really good. We're super critical.
Yeah.
We're not perfect though, but there's like we've talked about this in the interviews all week. I personally had to learn. I think we had to learn as a group, but I might have been the first one to point it out. Was just like at first we were really critical and of our playing, but we realized we were being critical of all the technical imperfections or whatever, or like tempos. This isn't exactly how it goes in the record, et cetera, et cetera. But it kept ringing into my head. I was like, well, everybody thinks we're better live though. So
Mm.
they must not be hearing the music this way. So maybe it would behoove us to judge it differently. So when we started going more with we started going more with swag and energy and just no glaring mess ups, I think that's how we came to the decisions you hear on the record.
And I mean, I think that's like kind of what makes a great rock band. Like you hear about bands talking about almost like this disparity between what's on the record and the live show and uh rock and roll really just lives in that live space, that live energy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do either of you have a favorite performance on the record?
I believe we do. I keep saying the first song. I think I need to go back and listen to the record though. Um,
What,
uh,
Won't Take Me Alive?
Don't Take Me Alive is so good, and I listen to a lot of those. And I specifically, I don't like to toil, and I wish I did it differently. Things, because I trust that the way I did things on a record is the way I did them. That's me personally, but I I hear the way I play the riff on the live record. I'm like, man, that would fuck a little harder if that's how I did it in the studio. But the way I did it in the studio was a little more rhythmic and staccato, and maybe airs on some version of funky. But on the live record, it's just like gnashing its teeth at you, and like I'm like, that's it, man. But to Mark has said this in a lot of interviews. The live show takes on its life as you keep going. And
Mm.
so, 60 shows in, you're like, we playing the song, but the way we're playing it isn't the way it is on the record. And that's an example of that. So I just particularly love that.
Yeah, that's a great one. Mark, what about you?
I mean, that one, I put the whole record on. I had to drive quite a ways the other day, and I put the whole record on for the drive, and that one definitely jumped out at me. I mean, I really love a lot of it for different reasons, but my favorite performance of my own probably is Coming Home from Bloomington on the record. But then, I already was thinking Notto about some stuff down the line that we've already been like, this one's sick from here, and this one's also sick, and there's a version of Gypsy kicking around from that same show that Won't Take Me Alive was at. And I'm like, this is sick.
That could be a cool thing for us to do, is to release the ones that are out, like that didn't get played that much.
Mm. Like almost like a rarities deluxe edition.
Yeah. I mean, putting Satisfied on the live record was probably the one spot where we did that, I think, because we should play that song more, I think, based on fan response, but we just don't. We kind of switch out that and some other songs. But that's a rarity that's on there. But yeah, Gypsy, that doesn't get played much anymore. So that'd be cool to release. I mean, it's funny.
That's an example of a song for me. That's probably the biggest example of a song where it took it really took on a life of its own on the live recording. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's not out on the vinyl and what we've put out so far. I think it will come out in the future, but it's man, for whatever reason, live, it's just got the swag that the record doesn't have. And I've A-B'd them, and I was like, the fuck? Like, how did that even?
Mm.
That's where you're really looking at things. My ideal situation, and when I'm gone down the road, I mean, we recorded When I'm Gone and Down the Road several times before what happened on the record happened, on the very first album. Like there's different recordings of that song leading up to what eventually got released as Dirty Honey's When I'm Gone and Down the Road. And I think when it goes through that maturation process and you play it live a bunch of times before you get into the studio, there's something that happens to the song where those little nuances that you love are already tucked in there. And I think there's a more honest representation of the studio and live blend in the recorded version. And yeah, I just wish, like I want that version of Gypsy to come out because it's such a leap forward in the swag and the attitude and the way it's played, that it's just so much better.
Yeah, I'm super curious. I'd love to hear this.
Everything you said is true, but also the bitch of it is also sometimes the opposite is true. Like, I think our version of California Dreamin' on the record came out really good, and it's actually because it was fresh. Like, we really started that song 2 weeks before we just were really excited. Whereas some of the bangers on that record, we had already been playing on the road for like 6 months to work them out, and so we were so comfortable and not reaching for anything that they came out great. But like there's something. Sometimes the opposite is true is really the only point of that, and it's just it's weird. You got to like follow your sense, and just like be willing to be, yeah, I guess malleable, but it's sometimes that's the thing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. What to you makes for a really strong live album?
A good title, first, because we were like, all right, alive is taken, comes alive, taken, you know. It seemed to be short words. That's not the most important part. Mark, what
Yeah.
do you?
And I mean, you've got two words and one of them's three syllables, not very short.
No.
Yeah. No, but I think what we were striving for is just adding a different dimension to there. Like John always says, the Eagles live record is great, but like
Hmm.
it's basically just the studio performances in a live setting. Like there's no swag on it, whereas he's like it's kind of a step backwards because it's a more poorly recorded version of them doing the exact same thing. So it's like I can just put the
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
They
you want
play it actually, Lily, but it's not. I'm like, I'm gonna put on the studio record. It's
Yeah.
gonna
yeah,
it's gonna
they're
be
a band that tries to play everything note for note, and so the live record doesn't really add a different dimension to the studio recordings. Whereas, when you listen to Zeppelin or Aerosmith or AC/DC, the Stones, like there's so much like swag in all those live records and recordings that, there's a new take, there's a fresh take on the songs. And I think that's what you're always going for. And obviously, um, portraying your musicianship and your performing ability on a live record is an important aspect of it.
Now, when you think back to like the great live albums, what are some of the first records that come to mind?
for me, it's the song remains the same. Led Zepp, that was the first
Mm.
one, and then of course, How the West Was Won after that. And they both came with companion DVDs, so that I watched the crap out of those.
Is
And
that
then
why you guys went towards doing this four-part documentary series as well?
I don't know if we thought that initially, but once we realized we had both going, we were going through the shows, and we had already had a guy film us on the road. It was just like, oh well, now these go together.
Hmm.
It's something our manager has harped on us from the day one, that just like you always want to have like a bunch of things at once if you can. Just kind of it's more exciting. Like different medium things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we always release a video when we do a single on the radio, and then we hit the road. And you see it's just artists do that all the time. So I think that was just an easy. I mean, it was really Mark came to us and said, like, hey, should we have my buddy come out and film us? And I've always wanted to do that. I wanted to do it in the beginning, but we we had like iPhones and like a minivan. Which would have been funny, but um, but back to live albums. Yeah, sorry. So song remains the same, like AC/DC live at Donington. I used to love Hendrix Band of Gypsies, Allman Brothers, Fillmore East. Actually, Jimi Hendrix at Monterey Pop too.
Mm.
These were all the vinyls I found in my mom's collection, and on the opposite side was Otis Redding, so I kind of got a dose of both of those. And Van Halen right here, right now. I don't know what else. I mean, I for a minute there dug Muse's Harp, which came out in like '06. That was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that was a cool one too.
That was a cool one. There was still more rock, and he does have
Hmm.
in that setting, which is kind of opposite of us. He does have that like wing it, like he'll randomly hit that chaos pad or do a whammy slide, or he's a little bit wild on it, kind of like in the spirit of the way we are. So that one kind of resonated with me, but didn't stick with me as long.
Fair, fair. So the title of the record has already come up once, right? You got to have a great title. Mayhem and Revelry. Why that title? What moments from the road come to mind with that one?
The biggest one for me was being being totally exhausted by the end of that first European tour that we recorded, and we wound up in Paris to finish the tour, and everybody's just like, yeah, one more, and then like we're all going on vacation or we're going home or whatever it is, and we had sold out the Moulin Rouge, and this fucking Parisian crowd was just so insane. And it was just a night that had all of the things, like just passionate, excited crowds singing along with you, mosh pits, John crowd surfing, them really just falling in love with the ballad "You Make It All Right." That's the version that wound up on the live record, and it just was like, it was magical on so many levels, and such a wild ride of a live show that none of us, we haven't played a ton in France, and it was truly mayhem and revelry. It was chaotic, but it was celebratory. It was all the things that you would want to see, I think, at a show. It's just fucking, I just specifically remember like a mosh breaking out, and there's just like a great divide of like, okay, we have really young, passionate fans in France mixed with some older cats, and like, just people are like, I don't know what the fucking do in this chaos, because we're not really a moshing type band.
Yeah. Still, that's
But
sick.
it was just a lot of pent up fucking excitement, and people lost their shit, and it was great. So we loved it.
Nice.
Yeah, I
Is
can't wait
that
to
where the artwork is
like
from with John crowd surfing?
that's from Seattle actually, but yeah, another great live.
Ironically, the other shot that we thought about using was crowd surfing from that. Somebody got one,
Nice.
but
Oh, that was Paris that night?
yeah, that's what that was. The other shot was Paris, yeah. They were both crowd surfing. That one was like from the side, and it was really obscured at all where I was. It was just like hands holding me up from the side, but it wasn't very zoomed out. So we weren't sure. I actually voted for that one, but I think they're both amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a very hard decision, to be honest.
Bringing it back to the band as a whole, you guys impressively remain entirely independent, which is crazy. You've done so much like with releases, with like, working with different musicians. What challenges and what rewards does this pose to you guys?
The obvious one is just, financially, like it's everything's on your back. There is no tour support from a record label. There's no uh radio promotion support from a record label. It's everything comes from whatever it is that we're generating. So like every time we go out onto a tour, it's like, oh, you made like X amount of dollars, and then you're like, oh, but wait, like we got to pay for radio promotion or whatever with that money. So like you're kind of, it's this endless cycle of like, well, we have this much in our bank account, but like we have this much we have to spend coming up. And now even right this second, it's like, well, we've got to pay for whatever the next record is. So we got to forecast like a loss, so it's like you're always navigating that. But if it goes big, really big, you own everything. And so like that scale it'll just fucking seesaw to the other side, which is great. And then on the creative side, you're dealing with so much less chaos whenever you need to get something done. We've heard stories a million times, like a band will submit a record to their record label and it just gets shelved, and like it never even comes out, and then the band gets dropped, and then all of a sudden they're looking around with their hat in their hand, like no real career or direction of their future. And like, yeah, that's really fucked up. So to be holding the cards and have control over your own destiny, it's obviously a great position to be in. And we've done a lot with very little so far, but John and I question all the time, like, well, would we be huge if like we had a record label working this globally? Like you just don't know. Obviously, it's a risk.
Of course, yeah.
So, but I'm pretty happy with everything so far.
Yeah, like I said, it's an incredibly inspiring story. It's crazy that you guys remain independent and have found this audience that you've found in like the 2020s. It's wild.
Yeah.
Um, the question, I know we've talked about live records, but the question that I like to end off with all my guests, what are your three desert island records?
That's a good question. Oh, well, I guess I'd go with the first record I fell in love with, which for real would be Led Zeppelin 2.
Mm.
Oh. And then yeah, I don't even, man, I'd have to pick three moods, right?
That's what I'm thinking in my head. Yeah.
Like all time rock. I guess I got to pick that record for me, and then I got to pick like something funky. Uh, um, so- dude, that's crazy, man. I don't even know. Three records? I'm too much of a chameleon. Um, I really, actual album. It's funny. Mark, you go because I actually just answered this question. I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna cheat.
No, I know. I'm trying to think of what the Zeppelin live one is,
I'm
but
literally gonna.
whatever the Zeppelin live one is that has the rain song would be coming with me because it would have a nice arc of Zeppelin
Yeah,
style genres in it to accommodate moods. And then I'd have to go with AC/DC live. That's one of my favorite live records. And I'm gonna go with all live records. That's kind of what I grew up on though. And I'd go with Sam Cooke live Sam Cooke
Oh,
live at the Cabana. Just in case I get stuck on a desert island, I need to grill up some fish or something. It's some good cooking music.
yeah.
oh,
I
man.
didn't expect that last one. That's a fantastic one.
Desert Island
That's
albums. Oh,
amazing live record for sure. Not
see,
as
these aren't
really
even live.
going in
I don't know,
hard.
man. I'm like caving. I guess I have super caving, dude. Three albums. So Zep 2, um, maybe like Fish Alive one from my teenage years, and then like if I'm depressed, maybe like Jeff Buckley, Grace.
Oh, Grace is such a great one too. Also an
Yeah,
unexpected last pick there.
yeah, that one hurts the right way. So when I realize I'm still on the desert island and I'm feeling bad for myself, I can put that on. When I want to not care at all and be like a little Looney Tunes, I'll put on the Fish one. And when I want to hear the real power of rock, I'll put on Zeppelin 2.
Sick.
Even then, I would go insane after a month of those three albums.
Well, John, Mark, thank you very much for joining me today on Beats by Jer and for the Spill magazine.
Yeah, thank you,
Likewise,
man.
man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great talking to you guys. Have a good one.
You
Take
too.
care.
Thank you for tuning into my conversation with Dirty Honey's Marc LaBelle and John Notto. Mayhem and Revelry Live is available on all digital platforms, and you can watch the 4-part documentary on their YouTube channel. You can also get a signed copy of the record on blue vinyl via their website. Tune in 2 weeks for another new episode, and follow me at Beats by Jer on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm Jared Harris, and this is Beats by Jer.